Hey there, my friend. It's Trisha Carr. Real quick before we head into this episode, I just want to make sure that you know about Modern Mystic Life, a subscription service for spiritual mentoring and education. The monthly subscription is only $11.11 per month. We have regular support and inspiration delivered with the utmost ease right into your text messenger 2 to 4 times per week. You can use your mobile device or your desktop messenger to access the lessons and meditations, a monthly MP3 download of a produced meditation, at least once per month live meditation led by me. There is no account login, and we have a monthly live class workshop. These are usually $35 for non-subscribers, so it is quite a deal. And the community is amazing. This is a way for you to support the Charmed Life podcast and also a way for us to be able to work more closely together. So do check out how you can subscribe in the show notes. I hope to see you there. Hello and welcome to the Charmed Life podcast. This podcast is all about magic, metaphysics, mysticism, and the unconditional love of the universe, and I am your host. My name is Trisha Carr. Welcome to this episode. We have a beautiful and authentic and heartfelt conversation for you today with my very special, amazing guest. Her name is Nadia Gabrielle. And before I head into that, I wanted to share a little something about just something that I have discovered recently. I was hanging out with a couple of dear friends, and one of them, we're talking about human design in this particular episode. One of them was a generator, one of them is a projector, and I was sharing with the projector a certain hike that I do that's really challenging and all this kind of stuff. And the projector asked me, like, how is that possible? I think you have more energy than I do. That projector does happen to have a motor center, meaning a source, a resource, a stable resource of a defined energy center that actually gives you that energy, gives you the life force energy. Whereas as a reflector or as my guest today, we have no motor centers, and so we don't really have consistent life force energy. And so back to what my friend said, she's like, how can you do something that challenging, that difficult regularly? And well, the thing is that, of course, it's relative to where you are with your fitness, but within that fitness, spectrum, wherever you are, that body movement, and especially if you can somehow emphasize nature, if you're doing it outside as opposed to like in a gym with all of the artificial lighting and whatever else, which that still does work. But if you are able to do body movement of any kind, walking, hiking, running, also resistance training, plyometrics, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a CrossFit, yoga, Pilates, anything where we are interacting with gravity. And again, especially if we can emphasize natural elements in some way, then we are actually gaining energy. The earth herself is a motor center for us all. The earth, Gaia, has a chakra deep within her, a main chakra that we are all connected with, and it is a device that mutates us, cleanses us, and then gives us back our energy in a transformed way so that we are vitalized. That's something that we actually are interacting with when we are moving our bodies and interacting with her promise of gravity and being creative with it, picking things up and putting them down. Footstep, footstep, footstep. Those are all moments of grounding and interacting with that energy. So I guess I felt like sharing that with you because it made so much sense to me that the earth essentially acts like a motor center for us, and even more so because she cleanses us of the energies that are too much or toxic, thereby freeing us up to have more vital and refreshed energy. And so For example, when I am unwell, when I had COVID a few months ago now, I actually did walk every day still, not a lot because a couple of those days it was pretty tough. And I think the one day I didn't have it the worst, I didn't have a terrible case of it. But one day when I had a pretty bad fever, I didn't walk while I had the really bad fever. I mean, I was dizzy and everything, but I did walk on the other ends of it. What I could do was actually very healthy for me and returned energy to me. Now, of course, exercise, when we push ourselves to increase our fitness level, that's why I mentioned fitness at the beginning, and we push those boundaries, then yeah, it's going to drain us of energy a bit because we will need to repair the muscles. And that can all be within a complete range of health, obviously, to be able to push the boundaries to make ourselves stronger. But working within and that in that spectrum of where our current fitness is actually life-giving and vitalizing. And of course, purifying and detoxifying. So I just wanted to share that with you and encourage you, if that resonates with you, if you could use the encouragement to move your body and to get some of that fresh breeze, maybe be by water, anything that can help to connect you with the elements while you're interacting with Mother Earth. Okay, and now I want to welcome you into this really wonderful, I'm still just like so warm-fuzzied from the conversation with my guest, Nadia Gabrielle, creator of Projectors Invited. Nadia is a human design guide and teacher, and specifically for projectors. Nadia merges her background at the intersection of business design and tech, and her degree in brand building, design thinking, and service design field. With 12 years of experience working in the creative and well-being and self-development space, and all of this is to provide support at the point where strategy and capacity meet. Fascinating. Strategy and capacity. So projectors are, of course, they are 20% of the population. They have less energy than the sacral types. And so I like that she highlights here strategy, which is very important, and capacity. Capacity is something that we all need to pay attention to. We talk about aura type as being the thing that really helps us to be clicked into our design, to be clicked into how our life is going to work. Now, if you're a generator, manifester, or manifesting generator, this conversation is for you too. We do also talk, as I say, about aura type. We talk about all of the types in one degree or another. Actually, I don't know if we talk about manifestors that much. Just didn't happen. We talked about generators a lot and projectors and reflectors. So I'll give us a little piece of manifestor here before I turn over the conversation. But anyway, we also talk about open centers a bit. And so, yeah, manifestors. Let me talk about manifestors for a second before we jump into this. Manifestors are impactful and powerful, but manifestors can still get conditioned. We can be conditioned in the open center. So for a manifestor, you do have an open sacral. And we can also get conditioned even in the spaces where we have defined centers. Manifestors often are conditioned to the contrary of what their strategy is, which is to inform and basically so that they can be impactful. And some manifestors feel as though they shouldn't be sharing. They shouldn't be speaking as much, or that they shouldn't be as big or take up space or be impactful. So just a little, since I don't want the manifestors to feel neglected in the conversation. Okay, well, that's what I have for you to set up this amazing conversation. She is so authentic and wise and beautiful. Here we are with our conversation with Nadia Gabrielle, and I will chat with you on the other side. Well, Nadia, I'm very excited to connect with you. And I love projectors so much that I'm already just like so warm, fuzzied in your energy. I married a projector, so I picked one and I love them very much. I'm just fascinated with everything that you're doing, the message that you are sharing. So would you mind just starting from the place of wherever the beginning you want to start at? Tell us about your journey, your work, all that you've been doing with your Projectors Invited movement.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. And I love, we just flock to you, apparently. Projectors love you.
I have a lot. I have a lot in my caboodle.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Well, I'll just start with a little bit of my background, and that kind of informs how I work today, if that's
Yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
Well, I always say I have two backgrounds that I merge in my work. So I have a sort of more academic, professional background, which is in business. So I studied at the intersection of business, design, and tech. And I have a background in the design of business, service design, brand building, design thinking. And that's what that's where I have my years of experience. And then the other thing that I also do is, and have been doing for over 15 years, is to write. So I actually started out in music journalism.
Mm.
And by, I think it was 2007, which seems so far away now, you say these years and it's like, oh, yeah, that's been like quite a long time ago. Um, by 2007, I was the editor in chief of a then quite popular music magazine online, and I led a team of 12 and have been writing professionally in some capacity ever since. So that's kind of my more, let's say my more professional businessy background. And then the
Mhm.
other one I have is in capacity work and maybe more of the energetic realm. So I started out as a yoga teacher, yoga and breath work, living in Bali and Costa Rica and Morocco and hosting yoga retreats. Again, this was well over a decade ago. And then I found my first subconscious work mentor in 2010 when I was living in Bali, and sort of began learning about these principles of the subconscious, and how it's quite more powerful than the conscious mind that we tend to so rely on, right, in our daily lives and our businesses as adults. And that's kind of where it all comes together, because I've been going from one to the other and sort of never quite finding that middle ground. So whenever I was, maybe I'd be employed somewhere and I would really like that job, but it always felt like something was missing. So I would be working with people on their businesses or their services, and it was like, yeah, but something's missing here. Like this isn't just, it's not just strategy they need. Or then I'd be teaching, it'd be more on this other side, but it was always something missing. So then what I do now, which I'm so happy to do and feel very at home, is I merge these two areas of expertise by working with clients on merging that conscious business strategy with subconscious capacity work in life and in business. And then, of course, human design for me informs every aspect of what I do. So
Yeah.
it comes in business, comes in life, communication. How do you support someone? How do you work with someone? Because I find that, I mean, I've worked with tons of coaches and mentors and guides over the past, what even is that, like 15 years, probably more even than that. And after, there's almost like a before and after of having found human design. I'm sure you find that as well, right? That it's like
Yeah.
there's quite a clear cut. And I just, looking back, I find that a lot of that actually has, even though I deeply appreciate and respect these people that I've worked with, and I'm sure have been able to take, some benefits away from that work, but a lot of it I found to be deeply conditioning, especially if, they happen to be generators or manifesting generators, and maybe we're more used to doing things differently in a way that I was not designed to do them. So from a lot of these relationships, I've actually walked away more conditioned.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
looking back now, I think, oh no, oh no. Like if I could just remove myself out of that and just be like, no, 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 you were fine. Like all
Yeah.
of these things that you're thinking that like you're just not suited, you're actually right. Like you're not supposed to do it that way. But of course, when you have someone you trust or someone you look up to or respect, or someone you hire for a specific purpose, and they tell you like do it this way or this way, or like no, stop doing it this way, right? You I mean, for a long time that was my story, all my life really, of oh well, then I guess I'm doing it wrong,
Yeah.
which I'm sure you can relate to, being a reflector, right? You're being in the minority of the
Yeah.
true minority of all the auras.
Well, so are you though, as
Yeah,
we shared before we started, not just a
exactly.
projector, but the self-projected
Yes.
authority, which is fascinating. And so so you have no motor centers, right?
No,
Right,
none
right.
whatsoever.
Mhm. I
Mm.
feel like that's a big difference. You're
Yeah.
the only projector that I've actually met who has
Mm.
no motor centers. No,
Interesting.
actually, no. I have one student who who is, I think, oh no, maybe she's ego projected. I can't remember right now.
Oh,
But anyway,
which
yes,
is also quite rare. Yeah.
it is. Yes, it
Hmm.
is. But no motor centers. That's a big deal,
Whew.
right? Even with other projectors who I love all of them, and
Yeah.
they're all technically non-energy types.
Yeah.
But if there is a motor, it's a big difference, right?
There's a difference. Oh, absolutely. I have so many, I want to say like maybe 80% of my clients are projectors. And have energy projectors in there that have tons of motors defined actually. And I will say sometimes, there's trickiness in all different configurations, right? So I find
Of
with
course, of course.
energy projectors, sometimes there's almost more of the illusion of
Mhm.
energy. So it's like, oh no, I actually can power through. Like I'm not like these other, and then there, to sort of catch yourself and go, oh, okay, no, I get it. Like I
Yeah.
still, I still have that requirement for rest.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, having no motors, I have to be incredibly deliberate with my time and energy. I constantly have to, sort of, I have this, thing where I plan things ahead for my business, or I kind of do
Mhm.
like my yearly planning and have all these plans because I have an undefined head. So I'm like, oh, this would be amazing, and this would be amazing, and like this would be cool, and I actually also think that all these ideas are pretty great. Like they're
Yeah,
not just,
of
you
course
know.
they are.
And then I like pencil them in. I'm like, oh, Q1, I'm going to do this and this and this, and then I already know because I've done this for a few years. Like I know my process. I'll sleep on it and then I'll get back and then I'll cross half of these things off the plan because it's
Yeah.
like I cannot actually do them because I also have an undefined sacral,
Mhm.
no motors defined. Like it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm not going to set myself up for success. So at this point, I'm very, very, very conscious of it and do have to be incredibly deliberate. And I've set everything in my business up this way.
And just to, in case anyone's like, what do they really mean by motor centers? Just for the
Yeah.
listeners, motors are the root, sacral, solar
Heart.
plexus, heart.
Yeah.
It's basically the bottom four of the traditional seven chakra system. That's the way I learned it. The way it helped
Mm-hmm.
me to remember which ones they were when I was first remembering them. The motor centers, they were what they sound like. They have motor. Sacral is
Yeah.
the most profound and life-giving and big and delicious and wonderful. So if you
Mm.
don't have sacral definition, which means you're any other type except for generator or manifesting generator, then you
Mm.
have significantly less energy than the generators. But if you have any of those other motor centers, then like Nadia's saying, my husband has, he has three.
Oh,
So he's in
wow.
trouble because he
Yeah.
burns out like that because he does
Yeah.
have that illusion,
Yeah.
that little, he has some energy, but then the conditioning of the
The aura is
sacral,
still the aura, right?
the
Like,
aura is still the aura. I
mhm.
love that.
Mm.
Yes, that is so important. I feel like that's
Yeah.
sometimes overlooked with the kind of current human design teachers, the newer ones. They're starting to dissect it in a way. I don't mean to complain about anyone, but I think the aura is still the aura is something we need to come back to.
Absolutely. I mean, I
Yeah.
wouldn't even know what anyone's doing. I'm like so
Good for you.
focused on. I think
I
there's
have to
like,
sample everyone, so I do know,
yeah, no,
but
totally.
only a
It's
little bit.
part of your aura. No, I think there's one. I forget which one it is. There's one gate that was it the. I'll have to look this up. Maybe the 28 something that I dove into when I was doing like my deep dives into the gates, and I was like, let me like just look at this one for a while, like just sit with this. And there was one sentence I read or heard, and it was like, you just need to focus on yourself. Like whenever you think you need to like look left or right and do it like this other person does it, your brilliance comes from you doing it completely originally. So I'm like hitting on follow on everything. Like, totally,
Oh, good.
and
Yeah.
I'm not consuming a lot at this point. And that tends to work well for me. I mean, I do love to like keep up with my friends and stuff, of course,
Sure.
but yeah, I don't really. And I think, with everyone, like there's a place for everyone, and there's like a teacher for
Hmm.
everyone, there's a student
Hmm.
for everyone. So I'm not very bothered. But yeah, I agree with the sentiment. I think aura is everything. There's like everything else you learn goes to me still through the lens of the aura. So even when you learn about profile, when you learn about authority, that to me is still like a 2-4 is a very different profile for one aura than it would be for another aura.
Yeah.
And an authority works differently, right? So I think understanding that, I always tell my clients, like, we could spend years just on this, because, you know, people just want to skip over that and be like, no, but like, let's talk about like the more glossy, the more like sexy stuff. And I'm like, no, let's talk about your aura for a second, because like 80% of what I see people be successful with, or like actually have lasting successes with and shifts with, is aura based. I think that's, I mean, to me, everyone knows him. I could talk about this for a long time.
Yeah, aura-based. So essentially coming back, as we hear when we're in human design, strategy, strategy and authority. But strategy is the main way I mean, it is, but at the same time, just understanding, embodying how your aura works. And it's as a point of differentiation. And strategy is one way to relate to that, but it's more than that. Open and enveloping with that sacral center. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
And have you seen, there's like these series of pictures that are sort of floating around on the internet of like the aura visually depicted? Have you seen those?
I've seen one, and they're stills, but is it the one where they show one of them is like square and one of them?
Exactly. And one of them is like a triangle, and then the generator, manifesting generator, is like really big, but like open, like a cloud kind of thing. I find even that, I find so fascinating, because that already tells me so much. And I think just by looking at that, I'm also quite visual as a person, but just looking at that, like, look at the projector aura. It's shaped like a triangle. That already, like, what does that tell you without knowing anything about human design? It already tells you there's a focal point. Like, all of this is focusing on one point that's going to be the most intense. Whereas, as we say, right, the manifesting generator, they have the more sort of cloud-like, like warm embrace, you know, hug type of aura that you can enter sort of from any point. Whereas with the projector, you're going to be, you know, the official scriptures, I suppose, use the term penetrating, which I'm not a huge fan.
Yeah.
But it is sort of shaped like an arrow, in that it quite literally pierces into the other person. Being that focused and intense. And I think any projector who listens to this will know that about ourselves. Like, we can do that. We can tune into another person, get a feel for them. It's like X-ray vision. At the same time, we need to be so mindful of that, because that can be really uncomfortable to have that focus, that little, you know, corner of the triangle on someone without them actually having invited that or said yes to that. So that is a continuous learning for me. And I look back on times in my life when I didn't have this understanding, and I'm like, oh God, you know, like that cringe of like, oh no, please don't do it. Yeah.
Why do you think I was going to say, like, I wonder why I love projectors so much, why I feel so comfortable in their aura. And one other person that I had on the podcast who is a projector.
Yeah.
She still lives, even though she's not on the podcast right now.
It's hilarious.
When I told her how much I love projectors, as I did when we started gushing about it, because I do, it's like I step into your energy, it feels like, when we connect, and it's like a warm bath. It's so comforting to me. And she was like, wow, I've never heard that. She's like, people always complain about projectors being too intense. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I like the intensity. It feels good to me, I guess. So I wonder why I like it. One reason why I think I might like it is because I think I'm feeling like I'm being... Okay, thank you. So I say thank you when I get the clarity, like, from my guides, and especially when it's clairaudient. When it's clairaudient, that's when I usually speak back to it.
Tell us what they're saying.
Because I don't usually feel known, which is actually fine. There's a paradox to it, because it's actually fine with me, because I am mostly about the other. But then when I get this, I guess it's a kind of a surprise experience. It's a little more in surprise when I connect with projector, because they're knowing me, you know, they're drawing me in, and I'm feeling like something, because otherwise I feel very elusive and transitory.
There's more permeability.
And there's almost in the moment that I'm with the projector, I'm feeling more constant, because
there's solidity.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
love that. I've never heard it explained that way.
Well, yeah, I've never me neither. I don't know. I just and see, with generators, I
Mhm.
feel stimulated, and I
Yeah.
really sometimes, their sacral energy that they're given away like candy.
Ugh,
I need it. It's so
yeah,
healing to
it's so
me.
wonderful, like, when it's right?
Mhm.
When the dynamic is correct, it's like that buzzy energy. I mean, that's what the world runs on. If we didn't have
Yeah.
that, I mean, we didn't I don't know where we would be.
Yeah, and
But,
can you
yeah.
imagine if every generator were doing what they genuinely 100% loved?
Oh god.
I know,
I
I
have
get
this
chills every
one
time I think of
meme
that.
on Projectors Invited. I'll have to find it. It's buried somewhere in the archives, but it's like, I mean, it's like a cheesy meme, but it's basically like, if everyone were doing like the generator, the manifestor is kicking it off. So they're not having their hang-ups on like, oh no, maybe I should like play small. Like, no, no, no. You do your thing that you're designed to do. Then the generator and the manifesting generator take the ball and like get it rolling and get it started. And they don't have hang-ups of like, oh no, but I should no, like they're doing what they're designed to do. Then the projector comes in and is like, okay, well, you know what? We could like improve this a little bit, and like this could be better. Let's do it this way. And then the reflector comes in and is like, how are we doing here? Like this group, how are we feeling? How's everyone? If we could have that, I mean,
Yeah.
imagine, because sometimes I find when I work with clients one on one, because that is right, the one on one work is always, it happens in a kind of a vacuum
Mhm.
of you doing the work on yourself by yourself with the intention of eventually, that ripples outward, right? But sometimes there's a sense in my clients of like, oh, but do I get to do that? Or like, is that selfish of me if I do that? Like with
Yeah.
manifesting generators, or like, what if I, like, you're telling me I could, but in the end, if you can see the bigger picture of like, no, this is going to also benefit other people. This is also going to
Yeah.
benefit your family. This is going to benefit your workplace, your employer, your employees. It's not so much of like, oh, this is just me like doing me. There's a bigger sort of template for that to click into. And I find that so important and easy to forget sometimes as well.
It is, and the conditioning,
Mm,
to live your design and all of the nuances, but let's just say even just with the aura,
yeah.
like, I feel like I'm in this process of more deeply believing, and then
Mm,
that it actually that is how and not even believing means I can do something, faith means I'm doing something. So I guess I'm coming into the needing to do something, needing to do the thing,
yeah.
needing to do the aura, and my body just collapses. The
Mm.
body's always trying to heal you and try to help you.
Speak. Yeah.
Yes. And so, but it does require, and I think it does for everyone, not just because, you and I have some rarities that are in the
Mm-mm.
forefront of what our design is. It does take a clicking into faith, because you can't see it. You can't feel
Yeah.
it. We're so conditioned. You can't, that template you're talking about,
Mm.
you don't really know about it because we've
No,
been all sold a different template.
exactly. And everyone's like struggling to fit into that because it's like,
Mhm,
oh no, but it's working for everyone else.
mhm.
What am I doing? I mean, I told you before we started recording, that's been my narrative for such a long time. Like, oh, but this is how everyone else does it. And they don't seem to be miserable doing it. So I suppose I'm wrong. So like let me get up earlier in the morning, like try to squeeze more things in, try harder, have more discipline. I don't know.
Yeah,
What else should I be doing?
right, and well, first of all, we never know what is really going on with anyone, that's
Exactly.
the
I
other
mean,
thing
I
that
know that now working
yeah,
with people, right? You're like, oh, I see everyone
yeah,
has the story. Yeah.
mhm. But there is, I feel like, especially manifesting generators, they
Mm.
really do they have time works differently for them. I
Oh
don't under
gosh.
It's
Oh
weird
gosh.
in a very cool way, and then maybe that's why Karen
In the
Curry Park
most fascinating way. Like, isn't it the most, like, to me it is like, I am in awe of my MG clients. I'm
Yeah.
like, what? Like, you get to do, I have one MG client, former client. She's so cool. I think of her sometimes. I'm like, we used to do 2 sessions a week, and like a session with me is like it's an hour, sort of
Mhm.
like like real time, but like cosmic time. It's it's
Yes.
like we go
Absolutely.
down the rabbit hole. There's a lot that happens in that hour.
Mhm.
And we would do 2 a week. And because of the time difference, it was like 7 a.m. her time. But I mean, she was, and then we do, I think the next one we do the next day. That's the only way it worked out for us and for the time difference. And I would give her homework in between sessions. This was more strategy work. Um, and she also had a full-time job. Like, this woman is like superwoman. Like, she would get, and then we'd meet again 24 hours later, and she's like, "Yep, did this homework, got lunch scheduled with this person that we need on board, da 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 da." Also, like, killed it at her day job. Also, is like an amazing mother and everything. And I'm just like, what?
So wild.
That is amazing. I am in awe. Like, just watching her. It is wow.
I don't know how they I don't if you wa
No,
I don't know how they move so fast. I don't know how
they
I don't
just do.
understand.
I love it. It's
It's
so cool.
very cool.
And it's so nice. I mean, for the projector, right, with our strategy, as we touched upon before, being invited, I find when that invitation is correct, and when, as a projector guide type person, you have that correct invitation from an MG or a generator, like, oof, magic happens, because
Yeah.
they bring that drive and they bring that energy, and you bring your thing, which sometimes I had to be, actually, she taught me a lot working with her, because I had to be mindful not to get swept up with all my undefined centers, right? To not
Mhm.
get swept up. Sorry, this is not my first language. Like, um, swept up in all that doingness and in all of that, like, and then I'd have to sort of almost physically take a step back and go, no, 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 wait a minute. Like, she actually is hiring me for what I bring to the table. She's not
Mhm.
hiring me for doing the same thing she
To
already
be
knows how
like
to
her.
do. Exactly. So it is, it, I get to sort of be that voice that's like, okay, but like, let's have a closer look here, and like, let's like really go in with a fine tooth comb here and do this. And whereas her natural tendency, of course, would be like, no, no, like, let's figure that out later. Like, let's just go, go, go. And I'm like, actually, but when the dynamic is correct, I find it's so life-giving. I remember after those sessions, I would just be like, oh man, I can't believe this is my job. Like, this is amazing.
Yeah. Humans are very cool and
uh,
weird. Humans are weird too, right? Like we're all
Totally. So
So
weird.
so you have projectors invited, which I
Mhm.
love. Just
Mm,
such a beautiful title of
thank you.
and is that the name of your business? So tell me, I would love to know a little more how more granularly how you work with how
Yeah.
people can work with you actually.
Okay, sure. It's sort of like two branches of the business.
Okay, that's
I
what I was
have
thinking.
my, yeah. So I have my sort of what I call the NG Nadia Gabrielle branch, which is the strategy and capacity work that I told you about, which, again, I mean, to me, in the end, it doesn't matter so much through which branch someone comes in, because in the end, it lands with me. Like, in the end,
Yeah.
you work with me, and it doesn't matter so much what the title is, or like what the, right? Like, I try to meet someone where they're at. So even in the NG branch, I need to rename these at some point. This is not
Why? I
like,
like
like corporate lingo. This is like the NG.
it.
So fun. Um, I will still use human design, even if someone
Mhm.
doesn't really come to me through that, or is also not very interested in that. I totally respect that. But for me, as I said before, it's so important to just have someone's chart in front of me when I prep for a session, when I work with someone, just to make sure that I do not condition them further or
Exactly. Yes.
condition them away from what they're supposed to do.
Mhm.
And just also, that sort of humbleness of like, I don't, just because I do it one way doesn't mean that it's the best way for this person.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that's what I do there. And I work with people in their businesses a lot. I also have a few clients who don't have a business or are aspiring to have a business. And then I have the Projectors Invited branch, which is like my, like the second child that like came onto the scene, and you're like, this is so fun. Like, I already know a little bit about how this works, and like, this is just gets to be fun. Um, and there I do more projector specific coaching, also business coaching. So again, if need be, we'll do capacity work, we'll do strategy work, but more focus on human design, because I find it I mean, all non-sacrals and projectors in particular, because that's what I understand, right? That's,
Yeah, of course.
oof, looking back, years of experience. And of course, all of us have years of experience living our designs, even if we didn't know.
Mhm.
I think it's really important that we don't sort of discount the years that we didn't know about human design, because those give us a lot of insight as well, just looking back at some of those dynamics that we may have found ourselves in, and applying a lens of an aura on that. You learn so much more than you would learn in a book, I find.
Mhm.
So I think that's really important. That's what I do there. I do classes and workshops as well, and that's pretty much it. I write a newsletter. I keep forgetting all the things I do, and then people sometimes remind me, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, I do a lot.
And so the classes and workshops, are they all projector centered?
Specific, pretty much. I mean,
Yeah.
I did a workshop, was it last year? That was, I kind of just like to go with sort of the need that I feel
Mhm.
in my people. Like, what am I hearing? What are people really interested in? And I like to meet sort of at an intersection of something that's not really there. So I'm probably not gonna be the person someone goes to like learn about authority, because I find there's other people who can give you that already, or
Mhm.
who are giving you that. But I like to merge my different backgrounds and bring you something that doesn't exist. So I did one class last year. The replay is still up. It's human design and deep work. So that one, while not specifically for projectors, it was for people with a specific center configuration. So we looked at undefined head, undefined heart, undefined sacral, and undefined root, which I, of course, all have undefined. You also all have
Of
undefined.
course. Yeah.
Um, and quite a few projectors do, in terms of what that means for your day-to-day work, because this is the kind of thing that I would zoom in on when I look at someone's chart, when they're signing up to work with me, and I prep for a session, and I sort of read through the form they fill in, and I hear these things, or like I read through between the lines, and I'm hearing what they're really saying, and I look at the chart, and it's like it becomes more of like a 3D. Like I see how these pieces go together. I always feel like a detective in a show. I'm like, oh, I see. Like this is all starting to make sense. And after you work with, hundreds of people, these patterns emerge of like, okay, I guess I can see how people who have an undefined head, they find it generally hard to do this and this and this, or they struggle with this, or someone with an undefined heart, or someone with an undefined sacral. How can we make a day-to-day work process easier? Like, what are the things we need to be mindful of, the tendencies we need to understand about ourselves, the structures that we can put in place that we do not inherently have with all of that openness, right? I find, sure, flexibility because there's more permeability, but also structures that you can put in place once that will make it easier for you, so you don't have to feel like every day you sit down at your desk and you're
Yeah.
overwhelmed. Like, you can think about this once in the back end, put that filter in place that you don't naturally have. And so that was one class I taught. So that wasn't specifically for projectors. It was just, people who had maybe 3 or 4 of those undefined, which this is how I love to work. And I think that's what people kind of enjoy learning from me, because it's kind of like fresh and fun. I hope.
I have no doubt. You are fresh and fun.
Thank you. I aspire to it.
And we will be right back. Hi there, it's Trisha. And before we continue with this podcast, I just want to make sure that you know that there is a big calendar of educational events for my Intuitive Healing Arts Academy. This is new branding, if you will, on my Academy of Teaching. What we have coming up is Intuitive Psychic Development Levels 2 and 3. Both of those will have a lot of practice time in it, because that is how you develop, enhance a new experience of your psychic and intuitive abilities, as well as teaching, meditation, and attunement from me. And we also have advanced channeling workshops, and we have 2 long-form deep dive, which will include a certification for those who are interested in animal communication and healing, and multidimensional mediumship and channeling. So check out the link in the description. They're all coming up. It's going to be all throughout the year. I want to see you there, and I'm excited about it. And now back to the show. I have to share with you what you're talking about. in that class, and you're talking
Yeah.
about the structure that you can refer to, this
Yeah.
is something that I have been doing for myself, of course, with all of my
Mm.
openness, and also teaching my students, mentees, clients about, and it has to do with open centers. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm undefined. I'm the undefined expert.
Yeah, for
Well, no,
sure.
I mean, but okay, what I teach is that with your open center, whichever one that is,
Mhm.
in that area, we need to use metacognition. Metacognition
Mm.
means to think about how you think.
Yeah.
And then if we expand that, it's even feel about how I feel. But the undefined center is basically about the other, or it's about,
Yeah.
outside. And so like for me as a projector, I'm not a projector. I'm such a
I
reflector. I
already
feel like I act
conditioned you
literally. Yes, exactly.
with my strong
I'm
identity center
so
because it's one of the few I have.
I'm so suggestible. No, as a reflector, so essentially the way it works for me is I make a copy of myself.
Mm.
And I say what would be healthy, or what would be successful, or what
Mm.
would be valuable for that person.
Yeah.
So because I noticed I did that basically with my spleen, with the splenic center being about
Nice.
survival and health. So in
Mm.
order for me to stay healthy, I have to kind of make a structure like you're talking
Yeah.
about. I make a holograph
Mm.
of what's healthy for me.
Mhm.
And then, so that means I eat this time, this much,
Yeah.
these things. I exercise and move this much with this kind of patterning. Now, I can't. I have to be careful to also revisit it with conscious
Mhm.
awareness
Yeah.
regularly, because I'm
And
going to
redesign.
change.
Yeah.
And I can't let it be my master. It's there to be my assistant and to be my help.
Mm.
And so with any open center, this is what I've been coaching my students on.
Mm.
And someone, even if they're new to human design, and I explain that to them, they're a generator and they have that open heart will. And everyone I'm telling this to, it blows their mind, but it sounds like we're on the same kind of,
Absolutely. But
yeah.
I love how you're explaining it. Do you find that it gives you, because there's almost like a distance when you have that copy and you work on that copy, there's a distance because of the knowing of yourself is harder, but the knowing of the other is
Yes,
easier, right? Like,
exactly.
mhm. It's like
But
you're,
so I
mhm,
make myself an other. And I feel like
mhm,
with
exactly. Yeah.
any open center, you can do that, even if
Hmm.
you're not a reflector.
Hmm.
That's exactly it. It's easier. And so if I'm a person in the world, well, then I can know that person too.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Because
think
in the
that's
moment,
wonderful.
in the body, in the perspective of it, let's talk, like, say, with that open head center,
Yeah.
it's all flooding in, and it's
Oh,
all inspiring and everything. And so
yeah.
that's how we get on the kind of
But
thinking about what doesn't matter, that,
yeah.
because it feels just as good or valuable in the from the
And
feet
you
on the
can
ground
spend every
perspective.
day that way, right? Like
Hmm.
you can go chasing this idea, chasing this thought, chasing this thought. But at some point, I mean, the people I work with, business owners, you want to get something done. So, what is a filter? What is a structure you can put in place for yourself where you can harness the beauty of the undefined center, right? Because every configuration comes with its light. Which I find for the undefined head, you can tell me if you have the same experience, but I find like we're so creative. Like we're so
Yeah.
right. I mean, with you, just the brief period we've been speaking now, you've been getting these hits, right? It's just coming in. Like there's literally no filter, so it
There's
just
no filter.
comes in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I find the same thing. Like I sit down, I've always been like the brainstorm, the person like people would go to, like,
Oh,
let
yeah.
me just sit down and brainstorm. Like my best friend would call me or other friends would be like, I'm working on this campaign right now. Can we just brainstorm for 5 minutes? I'm going to tell you what it's about. I'm like, yeah,
No
let's
problem.
do it. Like I love doing this.
I've got the rain, I've got the thunder and
Yeah,
lightning all happening.
totally. It's all coming. And like I love, helping people because all my friends are so creative as well. And like, my friend is a creative director, and like just sometimes we're talking about like what's going on in her work and like, oh, but you could do it this way, or like, oh, this way. So that's the beauty of the undefined head, right? You're never out of ideas. I always tell my clients and my students, like, you don't ever have to worry. These people who have like one good idea all their life, and we're like, we have like 10 a day,
Yeah.
10 to
Yeah.
10 or more.
Yeah.
But then figuring out which one of that is actually worth
Yeah.
pursuing because we cannot go in 10 different directions every day. I mean, we can do it for a little bit, and many of us have tried,
Yeah.
including me.
Mm.
And then we're at the end of the day, you're frustrated. You're like, what have I even done? I'm exhausted. Maybe I'm not caught out for business. Then you jump to all sorts of conclusions just because there's this undefined head running wild. And I think it's our job to rein that in a little bit by just being aware of the tendency and knowing that that is a tendency that, like, we're not changing our charts. The charts are given.
Mhm.
This is gonna be our life for the rest of our life.
Yeah.
So what can we put in place? What can we know about ourselves? Like you're saying with that copy, like, what do I know? What do I have to work with? And how can I make that easier on myself? And I
Mhm.
think that, like, that's how I like to teach. Very much like, what does that mean in real life? What does that mean when I have to sit down and I have half a day to get something done? And like, is it going to be some gate that's going to help me, or is it going to be me under?
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
fun.
And with the brainstorming, I feel like, it comes, and if you catch it and put it on paper, it's
Mm.
such a fantastic resource, because then like the next day, I don't necessarily, I don't tap into it. There's different stuff going on.
Yeah.
So if we can put it down, then you can go get back into it, and then the storm of that
Yes.
quality starts again. But
Yes.
it is the sort of structure that we're talking about. It's the creating. I mean, we're talking about manifesting. We're talking about creating from that openness.
Absolutely. And like finding, I call it creative problem solving, which is something it's also something that's in my background very much, and that I do with my clients, and that I teach my clients how to do themselves, because I also sometimes think we can get stuck in like, oh, how do I need to solve this? Like, this is just a pesky problem to solve. But if we can take a more creative approach, which of course with my design thinking background, that's how I think, right? Like every problem has myriad possible solutions. And
Yeah.
if we can take a step back and give ourselves like half an hour more for something, we can come up with a really fresh solution
Mhm.
that, dare I say, could even be fun. Like it doesn't have to be this like, oh, now I have to like figure this out. Like, no,
Yes.
let's figure out a way that like maybe no one has even thought of, or that, no one would even realize would be a solution. So I think that's where an undefined head comes in really handy.
Yeah, and undefined head is 70% of the population, so we're all
Yeah.
running around like that. Most, not all, but most of us are.
Yeah.
I wanna if would you mind sharing some of your firsthand brilliant wisdom and experience about being self-projected as an authority? Because it
Yeah.
it is so rare,
Yeah.
and I haven't ever spoken with someone self-projected, especially someone at all, let alone an
That's so
expert.
interesting.
Yeah, and
I feel
I
like we're everywhere, but maybe we just flock to each other, because I have so many
really?
self-projector clients. Yeah, so many.
Yeah. And I shudder, when I'm studying someone else and what they say about it, especially if it's something that is less common, because I feel
Yeah.
like anyway, I would love to hear, what is that experience like? What does self-projected authority look like, or sound like, or feel like?
Well, so it's very much centered in the G center, which is the diamond-shaped center in the middle of the chart. Um, and we actually did a whole podcast episode on self-projected authority with someone, and I find it to be such a, I mean, of course I'm biased, but I find it to be such a fun authority because it's very much in the moment, which is
Mhm.
literally the opposite of the spectrum that you're on, right?
Well,
Okay,
in a way,
tell
if you
me.
want to talk about that, I'll tell you. No, but I want to hear more
No,
about
no, tell me,
self-projected.
tell me, tell me.
My So with reflectors, I
Mhm,
actually, while we're called the slow energy types,
mhm.
I actually think everyone else is slower than us. And
Tell me. I love this hot take. Tell me everything.
this is why, because I get, let's just say, a download about something manifesting
Yeah.
long before anyone else does. And then I go through the archetypes of the lunar cycle, all 64 archetypes I go through every month, whereas most
Mhm.
people, everyone else goes through them every year, because they have the sun
Yeah.
that is more influential on them. So essentially, I sample a whole year in a month. And in
Wow.
relation to that, I am talking to other people. I'm planting seeds. I'm asking questions about it. And what it looks like to me is I am a fertilization device, And
Wow.
then eventually, to me, the idea or the download came, if it's a big project, it's usually 2 or 3 years ago. And
Mhm.
literally, this has happened to me in a large way 4 times in my life, and it takes, like, that long. And when the first time it happened before I knew about human design, I was I had created a job for myself, and I started to go to headhunters, and they're like, "That doesn't exist." I mean, it doesn't exist yet, and they were telling me that, and then literally
Mhm.
2.5 years later, someone came to me with that job offer, and I created it.
What?
It didn't exist.
That
I
is
created it
wild.
when
Yeah.
they anyway, the point is I get a download for something, and then I'm talking about it, and I'm being a part of it, and
Yeah.
then it takes, like, 2, and if it's a smaller thing, then it's relatively shorter time.
Mhm.
Then everybody else starts to then maybe it really does, like, I talked to a projector about it, and they're like, "Yeah, I get that vision too." And then a manifestor usually does come along and say, "Oh, let's do it." And then
Let's actually do it. Yes.
yeah, but the bodies take longer than the download,
Then
you
the
know what I mean?
download.
Yeah.
I love that.
So this is why I think some reflectors are like, it's not really wait a month for a big decision. It,
Mhm.
and by the way, the what it feels like when I'm waiting
Mhm.
isn't that I don't know what to do usually, although I'm feeling different,
Yeah.
fractals of it through the different gates. And I can literally feel, I just said this to my husband, we were driving, and I was like, oh, I think the moon gate just changed. And I looked and I was like, yeah, it just changed. I could feel it. And he goes, what does that feel
You're
like?
so in tune. And is your husband into this? Like, does he
Yes. Oh my
does
gosh, it's
he
changed his life.
identify?
Hmm.
Oh, I'm so
Yeah.
happy to hear that.
So projector 3.5. So yeah,
Oh,
so I I will have a sense of a kind of certainty about it, even though I'm
yeah.
feeling different perspectives of it. But it's just that the resources aren't there.
Mhm.
Meaning,
Mhm.
like, the timing and the people usually aren't
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. And that's what
So
takes time.
that's the time. But it's not really that I'm slow. I'm like,
Yeah.
y'all are slow. I
You're
got it
like,
over.
I got this download like 27 days ago.
Anyway, but I want to
That
hear.
is
Okay.
so cool. No, I have to just tell you, I mean, I've thought this a few times now talking to you. You have a really unique, I mean, I'm not surprised though, but you have a really unique way of explaining concepts
Oh,
that I've not heard, and I've heard a lot,
oh,
you know,
thanks. I
like
guess. Yeah. Thank you.
really, really like engaging
Mm.
in a way that I find that I would imagine, and I'm sure your clients and students in your audience would agree is like really approachable and
Oh,
like
thank you.
mhm.
Thank you. That's very kind. I appreciate that. And you're so authentic and genuine.
Thank you.
That's why I really want to hear. So I
Okay, yeah,
interrupt
let
the
me let me
self-protective.
get on it. Yes, let me just keep self-projecting as I
Yeah.
do. So as I said, you speak from the G, that identity
Mhm.
center, which is going to be very well defined in any self-projected projector, and you will also have your throat defined. So for me,
Mhm.
the throat doesn't really have much of an agenda itself. It's kind of like there's the pressure cooker kind of it wants to push the voice out, but the throat itself doesn't have much of like the content doesn't come from the throat itself. It
Mhm.
comes from what is it connected to, and for us, it's the G, and the G is that center of direction, right? I always say it's the person who's like, "You guys, follow me. I'm going this direction." But also, kind of like, if you don't want to follow me, it's also fine. I don't need you to follow me because I already know where I'm going. Like, I'm not even looking back. If you want to come along, it's cool. If everyone else is going the other direction, I'm still going this direction. Like,
Yeah.
I think all defined Gs will have this to some degree. Although I do also find that defined, like even the defined centers, there can be a lot of conditioning there. I'm
Of
working with a few
course.
clients on that as well, where like the G is so defined, and I'm like, where is it? I'm not hearing it from you. And like
Mm.
usually there's a backstory of, well, I never got to have that. Like I never got to voice that. I never got to
Yeah.
have that space of of actually living that. So it's very much like muddled under layers and layers. So we're trying to, free that, because it's really, I mean, it's like it's in your, I mean, it's not your heart center, but it's like your heart area, the chest area of your body.
Mhm.
Um, and it really, it wants, I think when it's defined, it just wants to be, wants to lead. And so the G being what provides the content that is coming out through the throat. And as I said, it's very much in the moment. So it's not an authority where you think a lot. Actually shouldn't. None of the authorities.
Ever. Any of them, right,
Exactly.
exactly.
And like yet all we're ever taught to do is like,
Yeah.
oh, let's think on it some more. Like, no,
Mhm.
no, no. And so for me, the way that I have found works the best and the way that I like to work with my self-projected clients is I like to listen to the frequency of the voice, because I find that, and tell me if you have this experience, I find that all the centers have their own frequency.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And right. And
Hmm.
with experience and with time, just really tuning in and listening to yourself. You can make out the different frequencies. Like I can make out when I speak from my undefined heart, right?
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
like it's wide open. There's no gate. There's nothing there. And when I speak from an undefined heart conditioning, I have a very different frequency in my voice. Like what comes out is totally different from when I am clicked into that G center. It's like it's right. I always liken it to like a bottle cap. You know, when you like struggle to put on the cap of a bottle and it just doesn't click in,
Yeah.
and it's like, let me try again, and then it clicks. That's what it feels like to me when the G clicks in with the throat and it just comes out correctly. You know, it's just right. And I can hear it in my clients as well. Like sometimes we just have to chat for a long time to get all of that other stuff out. All of
Yes.
this
Get the
other
water to run clear. Yeah.
yes, exactly like that. We call it in German, my first language, we call it a Beiggemüse. So it's like the side vegetables of a meal, which, you know, vegetables are great, but like all the other stuff that's like not the main show.
Mm.
We just get this out of the way so that, and then at some point I'm like, oh, can you hear it? And they're like, oh my God, I've never had this. Like now I understand what it feels like when I'm actually speaking as myself. And I
Mm.
think that's sort of the point where we want to go as self-projected projectors. And it's really fun. It's like when I find it's a fun authority to work with, the more you get to know it. So yeah, I love having like I'm fine with it. You know how people are sometimes like, oh, I'd love to have. I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good with my chart. I'm
Yeah.
good with my design. It's all
I
good.
know. It's so great. I love that when we love who
Yeah.
we are, you know what I mean? And because we are so special and unique and beautiful.
Mm,
And with the self-projected, the speaking, can it sometimes work on your own? Like, can
yeah.
you type out your voice or speak into a
Absolutely.
recorder that
Yeah.
helps? Uh-huh.
So I don't personally do the recorder. I know people
Hmm.
say it, because I don't have time to listen to myself.
I would.
Like I'm
I know, right? We can
like,
transcribe it. You could speak it into a
I,
note, maybe.
it's just not going to happen. Like for me, the way I don't even have time for this. But for me, the way it happens is I know the moment when it clicks. So I'm hearing what I'm saying that moment. I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, I see.
Hmm.
Sometimes it does help when I talk to someone, although I mm, it would have to be someone who's
A very safe,
like,
be a safe place.
yes,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
who understands the way this works. So it's not just someone who's going to swoop in
Yeah.
and be like, let me solve all these problems for
Let me
you. All
solve
these
it, or
problems.
let
Yes,
me envision it in a way that is what's right for
yes,
me, and
you
then
have
as
to
they
do it
envision
this
it,
way.
yes, and it's so frustrating, and it's like, no, you're impeding.
Mm,
Yeah. Hmm.
the process, let the
Hmm.
process flow. I love to do this with my mom. She totally gets. She's a generator,
Okay.
but she's super into human design.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes,
Mm.
she is. Oh God, it's helped. Like our whole family is now like really into it. And I like to do that with her when it's like bigger, you know, like business things, or when I'm grappling with a decision. And then she knows to kind of just, you know, I'm like, can we go out for tea? Can we like go have dessert somewhere and just chat? And she's like, yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna sit there, like have my have my dessert. It's fine. But then I can hear myself. And
Yes.
sometimes it's really like, it's also a matter of letting yourself go there and say the thing that maybe you don't even want to let yourself say. I
Hmm.
remember once I was doing this with my mom, was this maybe 2 years ago or something? I was figuring out some, again, like all my undefined centers running wild. I was like, should I like launch this? And then maybe I should do this as well and do this. And it's totally not feasible. Like the time wasn't there. The sacral energy is obviously not there. But in my mind, I'm like, no, I have time to do this. I love this. And and then I was looking at all these notes I'd written, and then I remember just turning the piece of paper around so it was just a blank piece of paper and looking at that and going, actually, I don't think I'm going to do any of those things.
Love
And
it.
that felt so good when I said that, but I wouldn't let myself say it for like 3 hours, you know? Like, we were well on to our second dessert by the time I would actually let myself say the thing, because I was still getting out all of the undefined heart going, "No, no, no, I have to, like, do this." The undefined head going, "Yeah, but I have, like, a Word document of, like, 700 ideas, and maybe I should
Mhm.
do 3 of these before the year ends." And then, my undefined root going, "Yeah, yeah, just get this off my
Hurry,
plate."
hurry, hurry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then just everything just running wild until I got to the point of, like, I'm also, like, notorious for, there's, like, all these Post-its and all these notes, and I look at the sheet of paper, and it just looks like chaos level 300, like, chaotic evil is what we're saying, and just turning it around, and the utter peace of, like, maybe I'm just gonna do none of that.
Yeah.
You know what? That actually feels much better, and that was the year I just kind of leaned back and was like, "I'm just chilling."
Yes.
And
And it
that felt
worked
really
out,
good.
right?
Yeah, totally.
Somehow.
Of course it did.
Yeah, when
Uh,
we are able to release and become flexible,
mm,
again, that takes faith. It
yeah,
takes being the belief.
yeah.
It's not just and it takes a lot of not knowing, and it
Oh,
just works out, doesn't it?
and really letting yourself get there. So I think with self-projected, it's a process. But
Mhm.
if you can let yourself get to the point where you can actually say the thing,
Yeah.
and then you hear yourself and you're like, okay.
And using the throat, I think, is good for everyone because using the
Yeah.
throat really isn't necessarily thinking, thinking, thinking. It's actually
Mm.
purifying all of the thinking that has been trying to run your life.
Yes. Mm.
Mhm.
Hmm. How do you find that works with an undefined throat? I'm very curious because mine is obviously.
Mhm. Well, my voice is different.
Hmm.
It's different a lot,
Yeah.
but however, it has some kind of structure or stability in certain areas. So, like with this, it's usually pretty
Hmm.
consistent. I guide people with my voice with
Yeah.
hypnotherapy and meditation
Mm.
and teaching and attunement, and it's fairly consistent in those arenas, although there's a bit of a spectrum. But I feel a resonance frequency band that I click into
Yeah.
when I'm in those roles. But if we recorded myself in my house, it would sound different all the time.
Yeah. For sure. Mm.
Mhm. And so, but it does feel that way. It feels like off gassing different
Yeah.
things when it feels different. And if I'm with someone else and it's feeling different, I'll try to breathe so that at least I
Mhm.
can just feel grounded and then just see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. I
I
do
don't know.
find the throat gets. I see this with a few clients. I have a few in mind at the moment that I'm working with where, like, you can just tell there's so much that wants to come out, and it's like, like the toothpaste tube when, like, it's just so congested and it doesn't, like, you just keep pushing, but it doesn't come, the toothpaste doesn't come out,
Yeah.
and, like, we have to clean that out first. Or like a
Hmm.
drain, I guess, would be another visual. Like, you have to clean out the drain for that to actually flow. And but when it does, like, the liberation, right? Like, that. Oh, okay. Hmm.
When I hit my Saturn return,
Mm.
I started studying serious classical music for 2.5
Wow.
years. And I was singing in school. Like one day, I remember my Wednesdays, I sang about 8 hours that
Wow.
day, every Wednesday. And so
Hmm.
I was clearing it out. And, those previous
Wow.
years, I had a lot of abuse and everything.
Mm.
And yeah,
Mm.
it was interesting. I had to just clean out those pipes.
Mhm. Do you still sing?
Not so much, but I keep,
Mhm.
threatening to go join a choir.
That sounds wonderful.
But I use my voice so much, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So but not
Yes.
in
Yeah. It's
singing as
not
much.
not as.
Yeah. Mhm.
All right. I love that.
This has been so amazing, and, oh, is there, gosh, any other invitations? Oh, don't you love that do you know any reflectors, by the way?
Yes, I know a few. I know a few in real life because I'm
Mhm.
also that annoying person that's like, when were you born?
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
And they're like,
that
I'm
person.
just selling you groceries. Like, I don't need to tell you. I'm like, no, I'm just curious. I know a handful. I love them. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, tell me more.
Well, I
But
think
so
it's
it's also like they're so like you're so because I mean I think the likelihood of me meeting having these people, because I'm drawn to them, because I'm like,
mm,
there's something different about you. Like, tell me more. What's your sun sign?
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's cool because as a projector, you can use your strategy on a reflector. So you can give us
Yes.
invitations. And I
Yeah.
feel like I feel that like that could be cool. I feel like I love to tell my projectors that I'm like, you know how you're not supposed to do anything until you're invited, except for with me.
Invite away. Yes. Well, I also find like it almost doesn't even come up with
Yeah,
reflectors, right? It
it doesn't.
almost doesn't, it's not like, oh, should I not? Because it's already organically, when it flows, it just flows.
Yeah. That's the thing
Um, yeah,
no authority is really kind of
yeah,
pretty appropriate. I mean, we
yeah.
are working with the moon and we're being,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really no authority is about, or no consistent authority.
Mm-hmm.
It's different in every moment. It's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Um, so anyway, I wanted to say you can invite. I was just curious if that feels, if that's kind of fun for you, like to have that perspective shift as a projector who in a relationship with a reflector, you get to invite.
Yeah, but again,
It doesn't
it
really, it's
just
not really
happens
necessary.
naturally. No, it's not even something I register as much, because it just flow, like it doesn't
Mhm.
even come out. It's not like, oh, should I wait for him to like, or should I? It's like, no, it's already happened.
Right.
We're
We're already
already
doing
meeting
the
up
thing.
for brunch. We're already like,
Yeah.
so it's already fine. Which is
Yeah.
how I love to do things anyway. At this point, I'm not like, oh, should I not? Like, mm. I've
Yeah.
I've tried to force too many things in the past, being a
Hmm.
projector, getting into that shadowy projectory thing of like orchestrating, like, oh, if I do this and then this person, but then maybe I can kind of tweak it. So it's like, and I mean, let's be honest, like it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's the
Right.
one,
And then you get out of it immediately.
and then you're bitter, and then you're like, ugh,
Yeah.
that was terrible. So at this
Yeah.
point, I'm pretty like, what's for me is for me. If it
Hmm.
happens, if it works out easily, that's cool. If not, I'm also more than willing to let something go.
Yeah. And that makes us again flexible and in that surrender position. And then things just seem to work out. They just
Yeah.
do.
And you can sort of trust. I mean, in the end, we never know. I love thinking about these things. I'm like, well, do we know? Is this just what I'm telling myself to like feel better? But I think believe that there's some sort of a protective force, or something that
Hmm.
just wasn't meant to be. I mean, I've
Yeah.
had a few instances where I really wanted something, and it was so close, and like, oh, let's make this happen, and it was almost, and then always something would happen that was like, oh, you know then I'm sick, or then this, it just doesn't work out. And then at some point you're just like, you know what, maybe this is just not meant to be. Like, it's not
Hmm.
supposed to be that hard to make this happen. So
True.
mm.
Nadia, this is amazing. I already started to let you go once, but
Yes.
I don't want to keep you all day, but I could.
I know.
I
Now
could
I'm
have
going
the
to
most
go
fun.
and tend to my migraine.
Yes, everyone, she's done this whole episode with a migraine. I wasn't going to mention it
Oh,
unless you
you're
did.
so kind. You're so well.
But I
Um,
appreciate you so much. And everyone, of course, all of Nadia's information are in the notes. Is there anything else you want to make sure people know about how they can work with you or anything that you have going
I
on?
think we've covered it all.
Awesome.
Just had such a fun time chatting with you. I never know, right? Like, you never know how it's going to go, but this was super fun.
Yeah, so great. Thank you so much for
Thank
everything that you're
you.
doing.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
I hope you felt that intensity in the most positive way and the authenticity, as I kept saying, because I just feel like who she is really shining through with vulnerability and with care and with grace. And I just think it's wonderful. I'm so grateful that Nadia came on the podcast. I reached out to her on Instagram and she has a really fantastic Instagram profile. I want to encourage you to join her newsletter too, because she is also very powerful with her voice, as we talked about. And, if you're a projector, or if you know or love a projector, or if you are maybe into human design in any way, check out her offerings on Projectors Limited, the classes, and because I think she is a fantastic resource and guide for all of these things. Well, that's what I have for you in this episode. In addition to making the invitation for you to scroll down into the show notes and please join my newsletter. I am about to announce 2023 and all of the programs and training and engagement and everything. It's very, very exciting, and it's going to be on my newsletter probably first and most easily accessible, easy for you to engage with that way. So I'm also going to be announcing soon, before even through the newsletter, I'm going to make an invitation for people to come on a town meeting with me, essentially. And that is to be able to connect on the things that I have coming up in 2023, answer your questions, be of service, and let you know what's been going on in my world and hear about what's going on in your world. So there's what I have for you. Again, just scroll down, you'll find it there. And of course, we have Modern Mystic Life that is available for you to register and become a part of. Our next workshop, well, they're usually the second or third week of, no, excuse me, I'd say the third or the fourth week of the month. So whenever it is that you're listening to this. Okay, well, I hope that you were able to resonate with your own aura, with your own energy through this conversation in this episode today, that you feel confident and secure to live in that space of faith and grace of your own design, because you are unique. You are cosmically brilliant and beautiful, and we need you. And I invite you to connect more deeply with you. I invite you to connect more deeply with you. That's kind of funny to say. I'm in the projector energy. So invitations are on my mind right now, on my heart. Okay, well, that's what I have for you. And I'm so grateful for you being here. Thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.